is being taken to court today by a civil rights group. This week, pictures emerged of armed police forcing a woman on a beach in Nice to partially undress for breaching the ban, which was introduced by some mayors on clothes that, quote, ostentatiously display religious affiliation. The photographs caused a huge debate on social media, with many people highly critical of the French approach. The French Prime Minister Manuel Valls has backed the ban. He says it's not compatible with the country's values and is the expression of a political project based on the enslavement of women. Today, the highest administrative court in France will be looking at the case. Hugh Schofield is in Cannes for us. Hugh, just sort of talk through, since the ban, how the debate has gone there and whether these latest pictures have affected the nature of the debate.
Yes, the ban is a municipal ban in 20 to 30 beach towns along the Mediterranean coast and a couple in the north. It's not a sort of nationwide thing, it's something imposed by municipalities, and that's being contested now by these rights groups which have taken it right to the top to Paris, and it's this court which is going to rule today. The debate in France is polarised, but what one has to say straight away is that one just doesn't have this automatic sense of outrage across the country, which we've seen in Britain, in America, elsewhere, at those pictures which were shown yesterday in British newspapers. Yes, there are many people who say, what a humiliation, how appalling. There are many people who are saying how counterproductive, how this plays straight into the hands of so-called Islamic State and so on by giving a propaganda tool. These images apparently showing policemen on a beach telling women to take their clothes off. Apparently, again, we need to stress, apparently these are images which we interpret in our own way, and the mairie, the municipality in Nice, says no, they did not tell her to take her top off. She took it off to show she had a bathing suit on underneath. But suffice to say that yes, that pictures today in the newspaper, it has very much relit this debate here, and there are both sides heard very loudly. One has to conclude, though, by also pointing out that the majority in opinion polls are for these limited temporary bans on Islamic beachwear here in the south. And when our experience talking to people here in Cannes is quite clearly that there's a majority that agrees with what the town hall has done. Person after person here, though we must remember this is a right-wing town and with an older population, person after person says yes, it's absolutely right. When in Rome, do as the Romans, more or less.
And what about the challenge by a civil rights group in court? How is that? Is it anticipated how that's likely to go?
It's a very important moment, because even though it's going to be ruling just on one case, I mean, there are, as I say, between 20 and 30 towns which have instituted this order. This case is being brought just against one town near here. But of course, that will be the precedent. And if the Conseil d'État, the highest administrative court, rules against that town, then that'll affect all these bans, which I have to say again are temporary. They're going to be lifted anyway next week at the end of the holiday season. It is a finely judged call, though. You know, it's not at all evident which way this is going to go. The rights groups are saying this is ridiculous. Are we going to reach a situation where at some point soon whole parts of towns are off limit to women in Islamic dress? And the absurdity at the heart of this debate is something which I think even supporters of the burkini ban admit to. I mean, there's a woman down here who've just seen who's wearing a full body covering on the beach, Islamic style. And technically, as I understand it, she's breaching the law. The police could well intervene here any minute now. If she walks up the stairs onto the esplanade where I am now, she's back within the law. It's that absurdity which I think may well prove the downfall of this municipal decree, or these municipal decrees, which, as I say, are in any case temporary. And it may well be that the Conseil d'État says simply, well, look, I'm going to take a bit of time to think about this, and by the time it rules, they've all fallen into abeyance anyway.
Hugh, we'll wait and see what happens with that. Thank you. Let's talk more about it, and do let us know what you think as well, and I'll bring in some of your comments if I can. But we want to talk now to Rachid Necker, a businessman who is paying fines that are imposed on Muslim women in France who wear bikinis and niqabs. Salsabil Beloued, a student who lives in Paris. She wears a bikini and she will continue to wear one. Stéphane de Vries, a French journalist based in Paris, and here with me in the studio, Esmat Geraj, who is a British Muslim campaigner. Salsabil, you wear a bikini, you'll carry on. What do you think when you see those pictures on the beach in Nice?
Well, I think it's sad. I mean, my first emotion was that, and it's also humiliating for the woman to be forced to take off her clothes in front of people. They were all staring, and I think she did that because she didn't want to be fined. Yeah, she thought if she would take off her clothes, the policemen would go away, and they did.
Rashid, you pay fines that are being imposed on Muslim women in France for wearing niqabs and bikinis. How many fines have you paid?
I have created the fund of €1 million 6 years ago to pay all the fines concerning the use of niqab in France, Belgium, Netherlands, Switzerland. And now I will pay all the fines concerning the burkini. So for the 6 years, I have paid €245,000 concerning the niqab, and concerning the burkini, I've paid 5 fines, but I think that we will arrive at 100 fines in these 10 days. But the problem is that next year we will have presidential election, and I think we will arrive at 2,000 fines in France.
What do you think when you look at those pictures that we were just looking at of the woman having to take off her outer garments? It seems to prove she did not have a burkini on underneath.
With this picture, all the world can see that France is not a democracy now. It's a dictatorship. That's why I have written to Mr. Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General of the United Nations, to help the Muslim women in France, because now there is no liberty for Muslim women in France.
Stefan, you're a French journalist in Paris. When you hear somebody saying that what is going on indicates France is not democratic now, it's a dictatorship, it's as bad to tell women what they can't wear as what they have to wear, how are people reacting to that?
Well, I wouldn't go as far as to say that France is a dictatorship, but it is very worrying indeed that a country that has liberty and equality in its publicity slogan is acting this way, is trying to impose the way people should dress and should behave. At the same time, most of the French I spoke to, they basically agree with the ban, and they're not really shocked by it. And it shows the very complicated relationship the French have with religion. France is the only country in Europe where the state and the church are very strictly separated. That's the case since 1905. But this law was intended for the Catholic Church. Now, this law is still valid today, but it did not take into account the Muslim immigration that took place after 1905. So there's a real problem nowadays with the place of Islam. Well, not a problem, it's a perception of a problem of the place of Islam in French society.
Down, sorry, I mean, just going back to what you said at the top about, France is not a dictatorship, but it embraces the values of liberty and equality. And that is, as you say, at the heart of this. What message is it sending out in terms of tolerance and in terms of making, well, I suppose, how safe people feel and how coherent society feels in France?
It's completely incoherent because it has nothing to do with liberty. It all has to do with imposing certain views, certain morals, the French morals, the Republican morals, which are in the eyes of the French the superior morals and the universal values. They want to impose that on basically everyone living in France. So it has nothing to do with liberty. And there, of course, there's a very important issue here going on with the burkini, is that in 8 months from now, we have the presidential election, and the campaign already has started. And as you may know, Marine Le Pen, the leader of the right-wing Front National, she's leading in the polls. And all the politicians, whether they are from the left or the right, they try to somehow copy her rhetoric because they know it's popular amongst voters nowadays. So it should be seen in the context of the French presidential campaign, which has already started with this, ludicrous ban of burkinis on the beaches in the south of the country.
Salsabil, how do you feel living in France in this climate right now?
Well, I'm always in the center of the debate, even though I'm never invited. except for today, which is very new to me. Yeah, they feel like they're worried for us, but in reality, they're just depriving us from our rights to practice our religion like we want to, and we're not hurting anybody. So I don't know why this is so important to them.
Esmat, you're campaigning here. What's your perspective on all of this?
I mean, I think the enforcement of this ban is both misogynistic and Islamophobic. Unfortunately, it is going to become a political football in the run-up to the elections in France. The idea that people should be telling a woman what they can and cannot wear is completely absurd. There's nothing offensive with the burkini. And as you could see in that picture of the woman in Nice, she wasn't actually wearing a burkini, she was simply made to remove her modest coverings. And that's a very worrying trend that will escalate further as we go over the next few months.
There is popular support in France for this ban. In the end, does it boil down to a question of what is best for community relations? Live and let live, or when in Rome, do as the Romans do?
Sure, I mean, I can understand the sentiments of the people in France. Of course, after the number of recent tragedies they've experienced, they're living in fear, and it's very easy to then find a target for that fear. However, there does need to be greater dialogue and communication between both sides. I don't think either side here is directly in the wrong, but there does need to be greater understanding in order to promote that community cohesion.
Lots of people getting in touch on social media on this. David, on Twitter, I've seen some pretty awful sights on beaches, but none of them involve a bikini. An anonymous texter, women should have the freedom to wear what they want. It's ridiculous that a woman is being targeted for being modest. An anonymous texter, my heart broke as this poor woman was humiliated. Are we regenerating to World War II ignorance? And an anonymous person on WhatsApp, I understand civil liberty, I appreciate political correctness, but it needs to be balanced. However, these dresses, bikini, full niqab, symbolises a them against us. Stefan, what is your sense of community relations right now in France?
They are very tense. Maybe they're even non-existent. Of course, I was in Nice after the attack to report on the aftermath, and I was really surprised by the racist comments. People are not ashamed anymore to express their racist and Islamophobic feelings, which is really rather new. 10 years ago, French people would be a little bit ashamed about voting for the Front National, the right-wing party. And that shifted like 5 years ago into they were more open about it. And nowadays they're actually proud of voting the Front National. And I spoke to a couple of people, white males, who said to me, this took place in Nice, and they told me, well, now they have gone too far. We will not accept this. We will retaliate, and you will hear of us very soon. And these kinds of messages, that you hear them more often and often. So I'm afraid that in the next couple of months there will be a severe clash between or maybe revenge operations by militias. There are armed militias in France, notably in the south and also on the island of Corsica. There will be confrontations which may lead to deadly victims in a discussion that's basically based on fear and xenophobia.
Salsabil, do you feel vulnerable? Have you experienced any racism directly?
I live in Paris, so yes, I did.
What have you experienced?
Well, I had to take the subway every day and every night. I mean, after the terrorist attack in November, yeah, I would get comments thrown at me, but I just live with it.
Living in France, how do you feel about the sort of values that are important to you, the values that are important to others, and how people bring all of that together?
Well, they should talk about us as French people. We are French people, just like us. They shouldn't say they or them. They should, create a conversation and yeah, and try to understand us too.
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. Salsabil, also Stefan, the French journalist. We were talking to Rashid Necker, the businessman paying those fines. Unfortunately, we lost contact with him, but also joined in the studio by Esmat. Thank you all very much, and thank you for your comments. Do keep on telling us your thoughts on that, and we'll try to talk about it again a little bit later.